I'm Tandy Culpepper. In this episode of The Hollywood Beat, I'm talking to a woman who wrote a novel about a menopausal vampire named Veronica. The book is called Forever 51, and the author is Pamela Skjolsvik. We're talking about Veronica, the menopausal vampire, and Forever 51. But before we get to that, I'd like to talk about your first book, Death Becomes Us, because you decided on that topic, a very strange sort of happenstance. Tell me about that.
Well, do you want me to just read the part in my prologue that will explain the whole situation?
I think that's a good idea. Go right ahead.
Okay. All right. The dreaded prologue. Okay. It would be pretty awesome to brag that I confronted death in a brave and dramatic fashion, but that would be a lie. I would never have embarked on an exploration of my biggest fear had it not been for David Foster Wallace. It's not that Mr. Wallace was my literary superhero, or that his books inspired me to question the meaning of my existence.
Can I stop you for a moment? Let's explain to people who David Foster Wallace was.
I'm going to explain who David Wallace was.
Oh, is it coming up? Is it coming up? I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going. My bad.
Okay. Honestly, I didn't know he existed until September 12th, 2008. The day he died. I was nervously waiting for my grad school instructor to call so we could discuss the future of my MFA thesis. She had recently received my first submission, and I cringed at the thought of her slicing through my sentences with a red pen or cackling at my creative use of grammar. Not that she was a cackler, but she did intimidate me, and I wanted nothing more than to impress her. Like Band-Aid removal, I figured it was best to just get the whole uncomfortable conversation over with as quickly as possible. 10 minutes past our scheduled meeting time, I decided to take matters into my own sweaty hands. I found her phone number in the MFA directory and dialed it. A funeral home answered. "Oh, I'm sorry, wrong number," I said, and promptly hung up. I dialed a second time without giving it much thought. This time there was a hint of agitation in the woman's voice. "It's me again. Sorry," I apologized. I felt like a pest for interrupting this poor woman at her dismal job. I triple-checked my instructor's number and slowly pressed each digit with paranoid precision. Funeral home. I hung up without a word, scared that I had entered the realm of prank calling and the phone authorities, whoever they were, would soon be pounding on my door. Perspiration trickled down the inside of my shirt. My interactions with teachers, or anyone in a position of authority, always brought on the nerves. Anyone could tell by my resume or my laughable liberal studies degree from an underachieving state college that I didn't belong in postgraduate work among professional journalists. I was pushing 40 and working in a dead-end job that involved proofreading ad copy for the phone book. And while I should have been grateful to be accepted into a writing program with such esteemed company, I simply felt like a fraud. A 2-bit campfire storyteller with bits of marshmallow and melted chocolate stuck to my aging face. While my classmates tackled big-issue topics like murder, war, and immigration, I played it safe and wrote about what I knew, my quirky, neurotic self. Do you want me to continue? Or do you want me to stop?
I think we've got the gist about the funeral home, but let's tell people who David Foster Wallace was.
Oh, David Foster Wallace was a very prolific writer who he wrote Infinite Jest. That's one of the books that he wrote. It's a huge book, and I've never read it, but I have read his collection of essays like Consider the Lobster. I mean, he's a great writer, but he was my mentor, Anaheim George's, one of her favorite authors. And the reason I was getting the funeral home when I called her number is because on that day, the the day he died, she was on the phone, her landline, talking to someone about his passing because she was very upset. And I was calling her. And so she's talking about death, and then I'm calling her landline, and my call is diverted to a funeral home, which is she told me that's what happens when she's on the phone and someone tries to call her. It goes to a funeral home.
How very
So
weird. He committed suicide, did he
he
not?
did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tragic. Such a talent.
Yep.
But that's the mental illness. You never know.
That's right.
So you were recently out here in Los Angeles meeting with an agent who is going to rep you, who is repping you for adaptation to film or TV with your novel Forever 51 about Veronica, a menopausal vampire. I have talked to you about this before, but the whole background, the kernel that from which this idea sprang, came about from your son?
Yes. After I wrote Death Becomes Us, I didn't know what to write. I thought I'd write a memoir, or I was going to explore religions because I wasn't really raised with religion. So I was kind of in a writing slump. And one day I'm picking my son up from school. He's probably in the 5th grade. And he's like, "So, Mom, what do you think would happen if, like a teenage vampire, like went to a tanning salon to get a tan because he was pasty?" And I'm like, I don't know. But for some reason, that planted a seed in my head, and I started thinking about a vampire going to a tanning salon. And because I was, an older woman, I thought about, the things that we do to try and make ourselves fit into this mold that, the world perpetuates. We're supposed to be, sun-kissed and eternally youthful, and and everything you've seen about vampires, they're all, ridiculously good looking, and they're always young, and and they sparkle. Well, some of them do. And I just thought, okay, well, what about a vampire who got turned at a very undesirable age in American culture? 51 is the average age of menopause for women.
51.
And 51. So what if a woman got turned while she's in the she's in the throes of menopause, and she is stuck that way forever, and she's pissed. So that's what I ended up writing about, because of my son asking me about a teenage vampire going to a tanning salon.
That is so funny. And of course, your son would have no idea. How old is he now?
He's 19 now. He knows about menopause because because I am, well, I'm still technically perimenopausal, but I certainly, we talk about menopause at this house. So, yeah.
Does the family walk around eggshells?
No, they don't. No.
So what makes Veronica fun? Because this is a darkly comic novel.
It is.
What do you like about Veronica?
Well, she's kind of the straight woman in this story. And it's the girl that she ends up taking with her on this road trip that they go on to, that kind of provides the real comedy of the situation. But I think what makes it dark and funny is because we just don't talk about menopause in our society. It's kind of like a taboo subject. And women are like, I'm going through menopause. I'm so excited. It's like, I want to hurt people because I'm so like irritable and sweaty um, so it's just not talked about. So I think what makes it funny is that here's a character who just, it's out there. She's not apologizing for it. So, and
She
I
is.
mean, part of her, she's born out of the whole death becomes us because she is a hospice nurse, and that's how she gets her blood.
She's ethical.
She's an ethical vampire, yes. So
She has now. Who is Jenny?
Jenny is a woman she meets on a flight, a red-eye flight to San Francisco. And originally, I just wanted to. Veronica has never flown anywhere before, and she sets off for San Francisco, where her estranged daughter lives. And I wanted to make that flight like the most. Like, what would be the worst thing that could happen to someone on their first flight? And it's to sit next to Jenny, because Jenny is a meth addict on her way to rehab, and she's very sarcastic and angry, and her father's a politician, and she's kind of the black sheep of the family, and they don't. So you get two angry women together, and then the plane. Spoiler alert! But the plane has to land, emergency landing at an Air Force base, and then Veronica starts learning that the things that she thought were true about being a vampire are not.
Interesting, because there are so many conceptions, preconceptions, or misconceptions, as it were, for Veronica about what we think when we hear the word vampire. And you kind of dismantle those in the book.
A few of them.
You create another narrative, which is interesting. Could you read a passage from Forever 51?
Sure. This is just a short passage that kind of gives you an idea. This is Veronica at work. Veronica glided into room 212 without a sound. She kept the light off, lifted the blanket, and inspected Ethel's toes. They were blue. George, is that you? Ethel's voice creaked like old wooden stairs. Nope, it's just me. How are you feeling? She gently tucked the blanket under Ethel's feet. George won't leave me alone. I'm so tired. Ethel stretched her arms like a cat, sinking deeper into the bed. Is George your husband? Veronica lowered the railing and sat down next to her. Lover, he's right behind you. She raised a curved, arthritic finger. Veronica turned to look behind her. Well, hello there, George, she said to the saline drip. I know you can't see him, Ethel coughed, choking on the phlegm. Would you like some water? She reached for the pitcher. No. Ethel struggled to sit up. Her eyes were cataract gray, but there was clarity within the cloudiness. He says you can help. Veronica stood. Help? Veronica nervously scanned Ethel's chart. With what? She knew the dark back alley this conversation was headed towards, yet it always made her a bit jumpy when her reputation preceded her. Will it hurt? Ethel pulled the blanket towards her neck. Veronica exhaled. No, you won't feel a thing. Really? Can we do this before my daughter gets here tomorrow? If that is your wish. It is. Please help me. Veronica nodded silently and upped the morphine drip. She wants my house. Ethel closed her eyes, but she can't have it. She's meaner than a sack of rattlers, that one. Do you have that in your will, Ethel? Yes, I sure do. Think. She was out. Good girl. Veronica stroked Ethel's cheek. She didn't anticipate an interruption, but she checked the hallway anyway. Empty. Marie and Kenneth were either chatting at the nurse's station or in with other patients. Silently, she closed Ethel's door and returned to her side. With just a slip of the IV, it was like eating a 5-course liquid meal with the benefit of a straw. No muss, no fuss. Veronica scrawled Ethel's time of death as 4:12 a.m. on the chart. She had people to notify and copious amounts of paperwork to fill out, but she had plenty of time and enough blood to carry her through the week. It was a peaceful, ethical, well-timed death, which equated to a good night. Let's
Good.
stop there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's poignant. Yeah, that's not obviously one of the funny parts of the book.
No,
No, it's
no.
more of a, I mean, it speaks to kind of irony, but the humanity of Veronica, even though she's a quote unquote vampire, there's a lot of humanity in the character.
Yeah, she's like Dr. Kevorkian, I guess. You know, one of the things I learned about, in researching death is, and I had no idea about it, but there are states where you can legally end your own life. It's death with dignity. You have to have a terminal diagnosis, but in those states, you can get a prescription medication and end your own life. And
I think Oregon is one.
yes, yep. And there's a great documentary about it called How to Die in Oregon. If you've never seen it, I recommend you do. It's very eye-opening. I think about how we treat our animals and we give them a much better death than a lot of people.
Isn't that the truth?
It is very much the truth.
There's I was thinking about that very thing this week, is that when dogs or cats become frail and in pain and miserable, we can take them to a vet and have them put down, and you can't do that with the human, even if the human wants to. It's I think it's probably illegal. So, but that's a downer. So let's move on. So you have a sequel you're working on, and this one is called
Wasted on the Young.
I love the title.
Thank you.
What's going on in this one?
Well, this is a continuation of, I don't want to spoil it, but it's Jenny. It starts out with Jenny's story now, and we get to see her as a vampire and what she does. And it's quite different from what Veronica was like, because Veronica had been a vampire for years and she wanted out because her, she wanted to be able to die on her own terms. She didn't want to live forever. And but Jenny is young and she likes causing problems, so she's a little troublemaker. It's fun to write that character.
And you've got this planned as a trilogy.
Yes.
And the third one will go in what direction?
Well, there is a matter of you can't become mortal again unless you've made, it's kind of complex, but there are some things that have happened in book 2 that aren't going to allow Jenny to become mortal. And so she needs Veronica's help. So it's kind of like Thelma and Louise in the third book. They have to go and make things right so that they can both be mortal again.
Didn't you say you were pulling the CIA into book 3?
Well, the CIA is in book 1 and it's in book 2. That is the enemy, really.
Isn't somebody running for president or
Yes, Jenny's father is running for president.
oh, Jenny's father?
Yes, he is the governor of Texas, and he is running for president. And will probably win.
And he has a daughter who's a vampire.
Yes, but she's being held captive by the CIA, so she will not cause any problems. But she escaped, so
There's a
it's a
lot
big
going
part of
on
it too.
there.
There's a lot going on. I went from being, writing stuff about my life, and then writing about death, and I write with humor. So this is just it is fun to make things up, and but boy, have I made things up. So
Your family, you have a very interesting family, and we have talked in the past about you writing a memoir. Are you moving anywhere toward
not
working
at the
on?
moment.
Not at the
No,
moment.
I have an outline if I were to do it, but um, writing a memoir about your life and your family is daunting. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I do. You said the last time we spoke that stories were important, and touch upon that.
Well, stories are how we make sense of the world, and they're also how we connect with other people. Because I don't think that, it's stories create empathy, and, with fiction and nonfiction, it allows us, even if we haven't lived that experience, to, kind of live vicariously through someone else's experience and develop empathy, you know, for that person, and their lived experience. Because, um, I just think right now, the way our world is, there's just so much fear, of the unknown, and it drives a great big division. And it's really playing out in Texas right now in libraries, just with books being challenged, um, books about race, books about LGBTQ, any of those topics. And they're, like, and it's very sad to see that, because I feel it's really important for everyone to see themselves reflected in media. That's why, I thought Forever 51 was important, because it's not very often that you see an older woman who's the hero in a story. It's, you don't. It's always, a guy or a younger person. But, once women hit a certain age, then they're, relegated to grandma, or just not doing anything very interesting. So,
You hit upon something, and it's very timely. And all of the creative writing to the side and your projects, you do work a daily job as a librarian. You went back to school and got a master's of library science, did you not?
I did in
And so,
2017.
and now you're a professional writer, but you're also working in a library at a time when, as you say, if you look at the state of Florida right now, this last week, the new adopted textbooks with the way they treat slavery, and mentioning it as it had having been a benefit to some slaves learning a useful trade that would serve them well later in life. It just hit a nerve Kamala Harris, Tim Scott, and then there's the Don't Say Gay with the textbooks there. And I imagine Texas is right there, nimbling at Florida's heels. So you hit upon something that's very timely. And I find your take on that interesting, because you're seeing it from both sides of the coin.
Well, I do not believe that, libraries, especially public libraries, are one of the last places in our society that people can gather, and there's no expectation for anyone to spend money. It's just a place for people to get information, to use the internet, just to sit someplace that's in air. You know, they can get out of the heat and sit in some air conditioning, or to, meet some other people and make some crafts or whatever it is. Libraries are important places. But there are a lot of people that fear libraries because they don't want people to have access to certain information, which I find really strange. Don't we want an educated society, or do we want to keep people in the dark about things? Are they more easily manipulated that way?
I was just thinking the word manipulated when you said that. Yep.
So
it's so true. So true. Wow.
Oh, it is. It's playing out more in school libraries than it is. Well, there is some, there are book challenges in public libraries. But I know, I just read an article today that I think it's in Houston, like a very large school district in Houston, they're getting rid of their libraries in the school. And I was like, really?
Seriously?
Yep.
That's frightening. That's 1984 stuff. Orwellian.
Yeah, well, oh my gosh. I don't want to get political, but we're coming up on, another.
Oh, let's get political. I'm
We're coming up on another presidential cycle. What is it, next year?
Yeah, the first presidential debate is August, right around the corner. I mean, next week is August. So, yeah, this year.
Who's that? Is that the Democrats or the Republicans?
Republicans, because Biden is the incumbent, and so he's not being challenged by anybody except for Marianne Williamson and Robert Kennedy Jr. And I'll refrain from.
Yeah,
let's not go there. Okay, Pamela, thank you so much for talking with me again. The book is Forever 51, and hopefully we'll be, there it is. And hopefully we'll be seeing it on a small or big screen sometime down the road.
That would be nice.